I think the definition of greatness is to inspire the people next to you. It's not something that lives and dies with one person. It's how can you inspire a person to then in turn inspire another person that then inspires another person. And that's how you create something that I think lasts forever. And I think that's our challenge as people, is to figure out how our story can impact others and motivate them in a way to create their own greatness.
Welcome to the Welcome to the 3 on 3 podcast. That's right. You are tuned in to the number one, the best basketball podcast in the universe. I am joined with my compadres, my amigos, Evan. I got Lou with me as well. And we have the Pod Mamba in the background coaching us from behind the scenes so that we continue to be that podcast, the podcast. So today's show, we're going to be discussing a few things, man. What's going on in Memphis? They got rid of their coach. We're going to dive into that. And the saga continues. Beef number 2. Is this the beef of the year? Is this 2025's beef? Stephen A and LeBron still throwing jabs at each other, man. Who would have thunk? And last but not least, man, the Bulls come up with a win. Should they be winning? What's going on with the East?
We really just talk about tank season.
So we'll get into that. We'll get into that, man. We got a lot going on today, but let's start first and foremost with the Memphis Grizzlies. It's been announced that the Memphis Grizzlies have parted ways with Taylor Jenkins, which means they fired him. And this is surprising. We're literally less than 2 weeks away from the play-in starting, the playoffs. The Grizzlies are in playoff contention. They're not in play-in by any means, although it is a tightly contested conference, but they've been steadily in the playoff seedings, hovering around 4 or 5, got as high as 2 for a second, but right down around 4 or 5, jockeying position with the Lakers. And all of a sudden, they're out here firing their coach, guys. This is crazy. This is wild. I know that we've seen coaching changes happen around All-Star break or maybe a little bit, but I don't think I can remember a coaching change happening this close to the playoffs with a team in contention in the playoffs. So, Ev, I'm going to start with you, sir. What are we to make with this coaching change with the Grizzlies? What does this mean for them?
So I'll be honest, when the news dropped midday Friday, I was shocked, not only shocked, but I was blown away. I just couldn't believe the news that I saw. A few days removed, I get it, although I don't necessarily agree with the decision that was made. When you fire a young coach, you got Taylor Jenkins, only 40 years old, already the most wins in Memphis history. Arguably the most successful coach in that franchise's history. You could argue Dave Yerger had a higher winning percentage, but not as many games. So second highest winning percentage, highest in wins, second most playoff appearances. He was about to be in the playoffs 4 of his past 6 years. So 6 years since he's been a coach, he was about to be in the playoffs for the 4th year. And 2 years in a row, making the number 2 seed in the playoffs. So when you get that type of production from a mid-market team, my initial reaction was, how do you get rid of this guy? A guy that has created culture in Memphis. You know, they had reclaimed the grit and grind of the aughts and early 2010s. I felt like the team was there. But then you look at the half empty side, and when you look at that, not only is this a team that's free falling to earth, they haven't beat a plus 500 team since February. Like you said, they've been as high as the number 2 seed. That was my prediction for the year for them, but they've fallen down to the 5th seed, in danger of missing going into the play-in. I think Minnesota, as we're recording, is only 1 game behind them. Golden State half a game behind them, so they're in danger of falling into the play-in contention. Really, one of the most gettable teams in the West right now, and their 2 main issues. Turnovers and fourth quarter execution has plagued them now for going on 4 years. They haven't gotten better in that regards. Even in the years that they made a 2 seed, they crashed out in the playoffs. They lost to the Golden State Warriors in a series that they had the talent to beat them in. And then 2 years ago, they lose to the Lakers in the first round in a series that was kind of embarrassing for them, ended the Dylan Brooks era for them. So you have a team that's headed towards another playoff disappointment the way they've been playing the past 2 months. And so when you look at it, I think it just came down to the writing was kind of on the wall for this team. The only thing that's guaranteed, in basketball, we talk about windows. The only thing that's guaranteed is that window shut, right? You got a team that's
Well,
been
hold
on
on.
this. Go ahead, go ahead.
No, my question for you is this: like, based on because you gave a lot of accolades on the
Mhm.
upfront, but at the end of the day, what does it translate to? And is that not in terms of what you think about what it may be the impetus for the rationale for them to say, "Hey, look, you've done great, but you're not getting us over the hump. So do
Mhm.
we need to do something different?"
Yeah, but I guess the
Yeah.
argument with that
Right?
would be why now and why this interim. So typically, I'll give a perfect example. What the Bucks did, right? The Bucks switched coach, although that was more so kind of personnel drama, et cetera, et cetera. We still don't know exactly what's going on with the Grizz per se. There's been some
You talking about when
reports,
Adrian over
but
to
right.
Doc?
So even
But he
then, the
was interim though.
organization,
He was Doc,
no, but
Adrian.
he wasn't. He was the coach.
Yeah, Adrian got
So
hired, but he
he
only
got
lasted
hired. He
30
got a
I
games.
contract.
understand, but why I say he was
But
interested? Because it was like,
even with that,
did they really hire him with faith that he would do something of such? Because the reason
they
why
did.
I can't agree is the same is because you look at the resume in terms of whatever laid out, right? When you look at a coach that is, can you get us over the hump versus in this first year, and then we may have an opportunity for somebody who has a particular pedigree. I'm gonna put that in quotation marks because we all know that Doc is a fraud. I
Ooh,
can't say this is an apples to apples comparison.
gonna get me in
No, so
trouble
here's
talking
here's what
about
I'm
that.
saying. You didn't let me finish. What I'm saying is the Bucks had a clear plan because Adrian was their guy. They signed him. They chose him. Doc was still there. Don't forget, Doc was working with ESPN. So if Adrian wasn't their guy, you get what I'm saying? Like they could have cut that earlier. They cut Adrian because of players not getting along, et cetera, whatever, right? But once they cut him, they had somebody clear in place and said, boom, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is who we're backing, et cetera, right? To justify them cutting it right now in the middle of the season. You feel me? Typically speaking, if a team is getting rid of a coach because they're not basically meeting their needs, a team waits towards the end unless they're a tanking team, right? Because if they're a tanking team, it doesn't matter. We're not going in there anyway. We could get rid of you in the middle of the season. We're not doing anything, right? But a team in playoff contention, historically speaking, does not get rid of their coach without having somebody, right? So, for example, if the Grizzlies got rid of Taylor and said, hey, Jeff Van Gundy's hired, you get what I'm saying? That would make sense because they're like, this season you can get us. But what you're essentially saying, at least for me, my interpretation is, hey, we don't think you can do this job. Something happened, right? We don't think you can do this job, or you got into it with the players, whatever it may be. We're getting rid of you despite what may happen this season.
But what's gonna happen this season? Like their ceiling is at best maybe second round. They know that they're not gonna get where they are or how they perform. This is not a championship run team. So do I wait to the offseason to cut all losses, or do we cut it
But
now? We
Lou,
already know what's gonna happen.
That's what we're saying, Lou. For them to bypass those etiquettes means that things have deteriorated. That's what's in between the line. For it to get that bad, Lou, that we can't even give you the etiquette of finishing out the season that we all know is not going to end in the championship anyway. something had to have happened. That's what makes this so intriguing. Am I wrong or am I missing it? You get what I'm saying? Like, what is
No,
it?
I feel
Yeah.
you, but
What is it that happened?
So here's what I think it is. I think you're in year 4 of the Triple J, Ja, Desmond Bain, uh, Big Three relationship, right? And you're at a point where you're saying they have not gotten definitively better from the heights that you think that they should get. You're at a point where your trajectory right now is Lou says second round. They're trending towards play in or first round exit at that, right?
I go
The
first
coach
round.
that's interim coaching, he's been a head coach overseas. He was a Euro Cup winner last year, coach of the year in Paris, and so they brought him over at first to do some implementations in the change in the offense. I think the window that they're at right now is that okay, by next season, by the end of next season, we've got to make firm decisions on we are either continuing with this group or we're going at it. And from what we've seen, Taylor Jenkins is not good enough to get us to unlock the top of what we need to be. So now a coach the interim coach now, right? You get a playoff in the season. Because if we know Taylor Jenkins isn't going to get us far in the playoffs this year, we might as well roll the dice on somebody unlocking something that we weren't going to have unlocked in this year playoff, and you have a next year to a full season to see what we can get out of this trio before we make moves. If this trio isn't the trio that we thought it was going to be, I think that's my read
no,
on
I
it in a
fully agree with
nutshell.
that. That's what I'm saying. It's like, so why wait to cut the bait? You know what I mean,
Yeah.
test the waters with who you have, who you think might have an understanding of what it is. You brought him in for a
That's
reason. This is going to be the
that's
hardest part of the test in the playoffs. You figure
well,
out, all right, cool. What am I shooting for based on what I deal with in this postseason?
And
And
to your
then
I
point,
you
Hans,
start to then map out
go
what your
ahead.
next season looks like from
Mhm.
there.
And to your point, Hans, that's us on the outside looking in, right? So clearly they see something on the inside that definitively says, no, we've lost too much momentum to make any move, to make any moves in these playoffs that are upcoming, right? What we
yeah,
think, I think they've confirmed it inside. So that's why they're like, why wait until the off season and waste a period of time in which some kind of change could potentially be made. Not saying
so
I agree, but that's what I think
but
took place.
essentially also too what you're saying is that we as the Grizzlies organization are willing to forfeit potential extra capital which comes with the playoffs. That's why it is. It's extra capital to
No, I don't agree with that because
invest
you don't
in.
believe that 10 is going to get you much further, right?
So that's what I'm
So
saying.
what
So
capital you really
so
losing though?
so you're risking that though. That's what I'm saying. You're risking the potential of that. So what they're saying is the potential of essentially maybe having a run because at the end of the day, right? And what I want to point out is what we don't know is if this is a assessment of the coaching or assessment of the team as a whole, right? Because the reporting is still spotty on this. Because it was reported that the offense was changed earlier on. Ja wasn't happy with that, wanted more pick and rolls, et cetera, et cetera. They changed it back, right? That happened early on. So for me, because you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about what we talked about a few months ago. Sacramento Kings letting go of Mike Brown, right? And Ev put it in a nice bow, but essentially was saying inept organization continues to be inept, right? And also the mixed messaging that happened during Mike Brown's firing, right? We thought Fox had something to do with it, but now it comes out Fox wanted Brown and Fox is gone, right? So, with what Ev was saying, because I think it's important, are they assessing the team as a whole? Meaning, hey, we need to change coaching and the players? Or was this a purely, look, we're happy with the quote unquote big three, which is not a big three in my eyes. It's a 1.5. Um, do we have enough there? You get what I'm saying? Or are
My
we
man said
going
a
to
1.5.
listen? I'm
Well,
just saying, bro. I mean, let's be real. Come on, man. Like, come on, bro.
I
okay.
don't
Well, hold
disagree
on.
with you at
Pause.
all, but it's
Pause
hilarious
right
though.
there for a sec. Pause right there for a sec. Because even in itself, I think that's a good question there. And I don't want to bury. I don't want to bury the answer, but I'm Ja's one of my favorite players. But when you say
Missed 30 games this year,
1.5,
by the way.
I was gonna say when you say 1.5, who's the one and who's the 0.5 in this equation?
You're not wrong.
Hey man, look, here's the thing. As opposed to some other players that we see the immediate impact when he's back on the floor versus when he's not.
Hmm?
Injuries are some things that we can't control, right? So he's always going to be number one. The reason why we even really talk about Memphis in terms of certain discussions is because of Ja's impact.
I
So
wasn't saying Ja was the
the,
0.5. Let me be perfectly
I
clear.
know for me, Bane is the 0.5 because it's like Bane is like, yeah, then it's like, wait, huh?
So you don't count Triple J in the 1 or the 0.5?
Listen here, man. Triple J at best is 0.25, but that's just a whole nother
So
discussion.
so so well, no, because what makes that so prevalent about the discussion is what I always say to Hans is potential. Potential is a French word for not worth much right now. The potential of these three has been through the roof. But like I said, we're 4 years into their partnership, right? And we still don't know with definitiveness
Listen, man.
what their ceiling
I'm
is.
gonna bring it into what we be talking about in the group chat and what Ev be saying to me. Okay, a few years ago, Ev was talking about my Portland Trailblazers and basically saying that we were
Every year
riding
I
a.
talk about your Portland
You
Trailblazers,
do,
but
you do,
continue.
you do. As you should. We're very relevant. Ev was saying that we were riding a wave when we had Dame. We were riding a wave of one season where we overachieved, and we're riding that wave.
Dame
And
CJ.
that season was not a representation of who we are.
Mm,
My reason for bringing
mm.
this up
Wait, hold
is
up. Are you talking about
is
is like what Draymond was saying about the Knicks? I don't know. That
no,
seems
no, no,
very reminiscent. My fault. Hold on.
no,
Let me
no.
put myself on mute.
Here we
That's
go
that's
again.
not the example I was using. But I say that to say, is this what's happening with the Memphis Grizzlies? That one year where they were number one in the West, were they just overachieving? Are we really seeing the Memphis Grizzlies for what they are right now, which is a first round knockout at best, given the talent that they
Here's the
have?
thing, though. If we seen another season where majority of the team was healthy and we had like a apples to apples comparison to have that assessment, I would be like, we can have a
Here we
conversation.
but Lou, here's what I'm saying. There's not going to be apples to apples because that season is not who they are. So therefore you're not going to get that.
Okay, so
That's
you already had an
that's
answer to your question before it was. I'm saying it's not an apples to apples because when you talk about your number one guy who has been out over half the season for two times, then I mean, what are we talking about?
And Triple J has had injury prone seasons. Desmond Bain has had, I think, most of last season he missed as well. So that's the micro within the macro. The macro is whatever the reason may be, this team has fallen short for multiple years. And it makes me think
No, great.
the team it makes me think of, honestly, is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Similar situation in which they had a coach, they had a roster of talent, the roster underachieved,
a good
and they
comparison as
said,
well.
look, we've got to make a change right now because windows don't last forever, right? We assume you've got 8, 9, 10 years because a core is young to grow and develop and come together. There's very few cores that get the
But
time that Jason Tatum
Ev,
and
here's where
Jalen
I'm going to
Brown got.
stop you on that. Again, you brought two great examples with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics. But here's where there's an inherent difference. You talked about Tatum and Brown. Garland and Mitchell. John who?
I mean, I
You
like all
you
three,
don't
but
have
I'm
that
biased.
you don't you don't have that same type of
Have
makeup
stop it.
in Memphis.
You've been quoted as saying
You do not have that same type of Memphis and like,
if
come on,
Desmond
bro.
Bain is your
You do
second
not
guy,
have that
you're in
same. It's
trouble.
not even exactly. That is nowhere near the same makeup. You cannot use Boston and Cleveland as the same example. Not even remotely.
See, y'all gonna
Not even
make me have a
remotely.
conversation that I don't want to have, but I'll go ahead and have.
I
I'm always
mean,
the one
look,
that has
what
to
more?
criticize. I mean, listen,
What's the joint with Charles Barkley? It's
I
time to
heckled
start a
Kevin Garnett
dialogue.
one day. Okay, so I'm not immune to this when it comes to my favorites. All right. The truth of the matter is, I love Ja. Ja is my guy. He's never played more than 67 games. The last 3 years have derailed the momentum of this team. You had the gun incidents 2 full seasons ago. You had the injuries that knocked him out of all but 12 games last year. And you've got the injuries that have only allowed him to be on the court 30 games this year. No team is going to survive 3 seasons of their number one being out more than he's in. It's just a fact. This was supposed to be Ja's comeback revenge tour season. After last year, it was supposed to be Ja's comeback revenge tour season. And until this team gets the job that was once promised, we are counting on two other players stepping up a seat in the pecking order, and neither of them is designed to be that. Jared
Yeah.
Jackson has exploded this year, but if he's your number one, you're not going to be long term successful.
What I'll say,
Go ahead.
because we gotta wrap up and move on to the next subject. What I'll say is it's definitely true to what Ev is saying, but nevertheless, I feel like the Grizzlies are moving in a way that's different than any organization has. Typically, if you're staying down pat, right, waiting for Ja, if you believe in Ja, you believe in team, you stay down pat fully. For them to get rid of their coach like that, it's definitely signaling there's change coming. I think it'll be interesting to see what type of change coming, just because we're not seeing the typical signals that we would see from a normal team, right? If it was personnel, there would have been rumors out there during the trade deadline, right? There would have been jostling and rumors about Memphis checking in, right? If it was personnel. If it's just purely coach,
Agreed.
that's rough. Something serious might have happened. Nevertheless, as we
Hey,
move on, the Grizzlies, there's something going on over there. And I am going to be watching them and the moves that they make. I think this offseason is going to be telling for everybody. And I think that's when we'll really know what's going on once they get bounced off the first round of the playoffs. All right, guys, let's move it on to the next. We
I
got
like you
this
slid
beef,
that in there.
man.
Bounce the
You
first round
you,
of the
you caught
playoffs.
that, right? I tell you.
Well played.
Man,
Well
I don't-
played. I see
If
you,
they're
Wes.
my
I think-
number one, I'd be offended, but it's all good.
I think it's a good practice for the Lakers if they're still in playoff contention right now. I need the Rockets to do what they need to do. All right, so let's move it on, guys. Let's move it on. We will be talking about this beef, man, times two. Listen, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. This LeBron and Stephen A. head to head is not something that I had on my bingo card for this year. It's not something I don't think we've seen this public in NBA basketball. There's been history of stars having beef with reporters and such. I don't think to this magnitude, but we are in a new age, right? Social media, podcasting, the landscape and the culture has changed. But just to give you guys a quick summation of this beef right now, I feel like I'm doing the whole Kendrick and Drake thing like I did with Ev, having to put people on game real quick,
Yo,
of giving you
real
the
talk. That's
timeline.
exactly how it feels like, bro. Exactly how
All
I
right.
feel like.
Here's the
So
timeline real
Drake
quick,
dropped
all
a
right?
song that said what?
Here's the timeline, man. So we know about the whole confrontation at the game, LeBron approaching Stephen A, et cetera, right? The outcome of that was Stephen A doing his world tour, basically letting people know on every channel from Fox to, I felt like I saw him on CNN, MSNBC. I felt like he was everywhere.
Sounds like Hodge is agreeing
I'm not
with
agreeing with
LeBron in
anybody.
terms of
I'm not
saying.
agreeing with anybody.
I'm
Boy,
just saying,
Stephen A.
you said he was on
I
his
didn't want
tour,
to
like
talk about
LeBron
this.
said, like he's on his Taylor Swift tip. I'm
See, I didn't
just
say that.
saying,
I
it
said he
sounds
was on a
very
press tour, which
You
is
was on his tour.
He was on a
Wow. So
press
you think he was
tour.
on a tour talking about the beef? That's crazy.
That's the nomenclature used in media. He was on a press run and talking about it, which as somebody who, understands his side, I get it. You got to benefit off the content, right? We said that content plays, content sells, et cetera, et cetera. But what we didn't see coming was LeBron jumping on Pat McAfee's show and having some candid conversations. Historically speaking, which is, I know it's something that upsets Lou, LeBron usually beats around the bush and, will say stuff backhandedly or cryptically, and you have to decipher it. He didn't do that. I don't know if this was drink traps. You know how they get a little sun in them, they just start speaking. But LeBron was very candid for his disdain with Stephen A. Called it the Taylor Swift tour, as Lou mentioned. Basically, called out Stephen A. for talking about his family and saying that's unacceptable. Winnie got a stray too, basically saying Winnie was acting like he's his BFF. He don't know this guy whose man's is this to to Winnie. it and
Yeah.
it went crazy. And then let me finish. Last but not least, Stephen A responded, because he ain't gonna shut up. Stephen A responded to his show, basically saying, bro, what are you talking about? You stab people in the back, you're backhanded. Said something about him not being fully visible during Kobe's ceremony, which I thought crossed the line. But anyway, and just
Wow. You thought
outrightly,
that
No,
crossed the
no, no.
line?
He
That's
said
crazy.
he said that LeBron was
Said he
not
wasn't
there.
there.
He's
And
yes,
then
but then
not
he went
present.
back and said LeBron was there in the same show. But last but not least, he and this is what I appreciate about this beef. Stephen A just flat out said, I don't like you, which I appreciate, because in this media, people have to be PC, and da da da. No, he straight up said, like, he pulled a Charles Barkley, I don't like you. I was like, man, we're here
Charles
for
Barkley is one of the best to do it in this current media
So,
age,
Lou,
which I love.
I'll let you jump in on this first, since we had Ev on the last topic. What are your thoughts on this beef round 2 right now? Wait, first and foremost, we'll say the first round was kind of LeBron, because he approached Stephen A, kind of punked him a little bit, had Stephen A kind of backpedaling a little second. What's the scorecard? Ev, you're a boxing guy. The scorecard kind of tipped towards LeBron on the first one. The second round, Lou, what's going on with the second round, man? How you reading the
Listen,
scorecard on the second round, man?
yo, you know what? Let me go on record. Well, I've gone on record plenty of times to talk about my disdain for Stephen A. Actually, let me be on record to be clear. I like neither. I like neither of these guys. Okay. You know what I mean? And it pains me to even be even in this conversation, because I would love to say the scorecard says they both have lost.
2 L's.
Yeah, it would make me joyous to be
TKO
like, you
each
know
other.
what? Yeah, you guys, you both got knocked out. You both are trash. But in terms of certain things, that in terms of Stephen A, here's why we'll give the edge to Stephen A in this round 2, because look, with Perk coming out, other people have then kind of in some semblance kind of uh, agreed or made comments that were in line with Stephen A saying, like, look, we've been knowing LeBron been a liar forever. You want to tell me you knew Kobe was going to score? You knew Kobe was going to score all them points his last game.
81.
Oh, I was telling my
His last game
man
6. Okay.
while we're sitting there. Yeah, it was like, yeah, I know he's going to do that. Yeah. We know LeBron is an egotistical, and you know what? I'm gonna worry about the FCC. He's an egotistical whore. Like, he loves it. He loves it. He loves being the center of attention. And the crux of what Stephen A, and I think what people are trying to misconstrue, is he said, he criticized the fact that you put Bronny in a position that he didn't need to be, based on what you wanted for yourself in terms of your own personal accolades when it comes to the sport of basketball. Nobody's taking away from the fact that you're one of the greatest players to ever play the sport. You hate the fact that you're not, that you enjoy when people say, like, oh, he's the GOAT, blah, blah, but there's not a consistency that you are. You're not categorically surpass Jordan. And I know that eats him up in his heart because we've seen LeBron do things time and time again. There is like this is a pure ego play. So I would give the edge to Stephen A in this because for one, he addressed certain things that was just like, yo, point blank, like, look, man, you're mad at the fact that we criticize the fact that Bronny's position, his opportunity is due to the fact of what you wanted. And I mean, he called out certain things that he said, and then other people in the media who then align in some fashion. There are people that also disagreed, but the fact that Stephen A had even folks that aligned with him was
I will
already
say,
telling in itself.
I will say that is telling, given how big of a figure that LeBron is and the amount of influence that he wields, to see people aligning with Stephen A. Directly, especially since Stephen A. was not as PC as people traditionally are, right? If you notice Stephen A, he'll
Agreed.
be PC on his show, First Take, but then when he comes to his podcast, he's cursing and he tells it what
Yeah.
it is. So to see that people are
Yeah.
okay with aligning with Stephen A, I don't know if that speaks to, and I'll let Ev dive into this as well too. I don't know if that speaks to the legitimacy of Stephen A's comments or the power that Stephen A wields as well too. So, Ev,
Hmm.
where do you
Hmm.
go with this
Hmm.
scorecard, and will there be a round 3?
All right. First off, we're gonna talk boxing. Before we even get to the boxing part, there's no winners in this. Okay, no winners in this back and forth.
Nobody wins when the
Uh,
family feuds, man.
Nobody wins in the family feud. Two men too old to be
First of
carrying
all,
on like
there's
this.
no family at all.
But let me lay it out. This y'all are saying round 3. We're in round 5 right now. Let me get you right. Okay, I've got it. I've got it 2 rounds to
Agreed.
1. LeBron James with a round that's too close to call. 4th round too close to call. All right, I lay it out here like this. Round 1, LeBron James walking up on Stephen A. Smith in during a huddle of a Lakers game. Kind of a clown move, calculated move on my part. He knew Stephen A was there. They could have spoken at any point, walking up on him.
And he
And
knew the camera was there.
come on,
He
he
knew
knew
the
the
camera
camera
was
was
there.
there. But let's be honest.
And he
LeBron
knew,
James
oh,
is
this is the day that you gonna announce your biggest
but
deal.
but
I'm
but
on you.
let's be honest.
My
On the
time to
day
shine,
that
baby.
Stephen A announced his deal, 6'10 LeBron walks up on him. He looks 6'10, looks about 300 pounds standing in front of Stephen A. Absolutely nothing Stephen A could do at that point. I got to give it to LeBron right there because there's nothing Stephen A could do to win that round. All right. Round 2, the response by Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A.'s first words were, I didn't want to talk about this, but he proceeded to then talk about it for about 500 shows. I give him round 2 straight off a sheer volume of punches thrown in the second round alone, 10-9. Round
My
3,
man
though,
said sheer punches.
listen, round 3, I got to say, Stephen A caught a knockdown on round 3. And here's
Love
why,
it.
okay? The show
Talk to
he
me, Ev.
chose going on Pat McAfee, kind of cornballish, all right? The comments, throwing windy strays in inside, dropping the mother
You
efforts
said
here and there
LeBron
and
caught a
whatnot.
caught a knockdown, not Stephen A.
No,
LeBron
no,
caught a
no.
knockdown.
Stephen A caught the
Oh,
knockdown, and
Stephen
here's
A.
why.
Okay, okay,
No,
okay.
And here's
no,
why.
I'm waiting to see wherever it goes with this. I'm waiting to see where he goes with this.
Here's
Let's
why.
bring it for.
LeBron walked into your house on your Stephen A is ESPN. Remember, walked in on your network
Mm,
and clowned you on your network for 2 hours
mm.
and had who's supposed to be your homie, your sidekick, your co-laborer on this network, yucking it up and laughing at your face. It's the equivalent of Stephen A bringing Jeannie Buss on his podcast to talk about LeBron for 2 hours. But Stephen A can't do that because Jeannie Buss is loyal to LeBron. ESPN, even if Pat McAfee owns the show, the label let Stephen A down at standpoint. So
Yo,
that's a knockdown for Stephen
let me
A.
say
Not a
let me say two
knockout.
things. Let
Knockdown.
me
Go
say two
for it.
things here, man. Ev,
Go for it.
if I need to frame things in a boxing analogy to get this rapid fire out of you, say less. Because the way you cut it down, it was quick, concise, bang, bang, bang. You cut it down. So boxing, got it. Second, let me ask you this,
So
Ev.
we know
Uh-huh.
how we cut the wind out.
Ev, let me ask you this though. Do you not see it as this? Not his homeboys, but Stephen A's op. Because don't forget, when the Pat McAfee show first got on air, there was some
Facts.
contention because of the following that he had and the money that he was getting because he was getting paid more than Stephen A. Smith at the time.
Yep.
And there was
Exactly.
a lot. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, could it not be like I'm gonna come here and chill with your op on your network real quick and continue to give him some more views? You get what I'm saying? Some more shining over you. Could it not be at that? I'm asking, like, do you think it was calculated like that, or was it like, no, I'm gonna be on your network talking trash?
Oh no, it's
Come
clearly
on, you know
that.
it's
It's
calculated,
clearly
bro.
that because
Yeah.
McAfee was the way in. He could have went on any network show in the world. Anybody would have took that interview.
Mm,
He went on McAfee because McAfee's the op, but McAfee is on your network.
yeah.
Like that's like
And it's
saying
after your
I
show.
can get
It's
to you.
after
As soon
your
as
show.
soon as as soon as you clocked out, LeBron is there.
He's
All right.
clocked in.
But not
He's
only
clocked
that,
in.
the groundwork was laid. We
Yeah.
knew Rich Paul was on the show earlier. Like the groundwork was laid.
So
Like this
that's
was
why I give
I
it.
give
That's why I
LeBron
give it
that it was
knocked
calculated.
down.
Teams
Yep.
calculated.
Yep. That's why I give it knocked
The reason
down
why
to
I can't give
Stephen
you a
A.
knock, like, but then it is let's go. And here's why I say it's fairly even in what I was saying before is
Mhm.
when you then also have folks that are then coming out and then aligning with what you're saying. Pat McAfee doesn't carry as much weight. Yeah, cool. We hear what Pat McAfee said, but then when Kendrick Perkins come out, whoa, hold up. Are we gonna necessarily say, oh, he's the greatest analyst, he's the greatest voice in terms of what he means? But this is another fellow NBA player.
I don't know.
But
I
here's
think it's
my
fairly even.
I may have
issue.
to
Here's
kick
my
back on
issue.
that one.
And this is why I want to give round 4 to Stephen A for all the things he brought up right about LeBron. This is where I fundamentally have an issue with. First off, let me also point out after going to Indiana to the Pat McAfee show, he got the tip in that night for the game winner against the Pacers. You got to throw that in there as well as part of his round 3. But my issue with the round 4 is
And they
that
lost to the Bulls too. But
they
go ahead.
did. That's
Go ahead.
another round. That's
That's the
another round.
next.
We
But that's
have
the
time.
next.
That's
Next
coming
topic.
though.
We got time
Next
for that.
We have
topic.
time
My
for
bad.
that.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
the end
My
of the
bad.
day, I don't care what journalists have to say about the athletes. You can say all that you want to say, but why are you beefing with the athletes? I'm here to watch the basketball, not to watch you, sir. So I get it. It's cool, but how far down this path do you want to go? Because ultimately,
Understood.
as
But the flip side of it is like,
Mhm.
as an athlete, why are you beefing with the journalists?
I listen. Well, I
That's
mean,
just
that's
what it
that's the
like.
fundamental disconnect to begin with. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Your job is to critique the game. Your job is literally to have discourse about the sport and those that play it. So
So
if you really feel that hurt, that you come on, man.
Yeah,
I've
but
never
at the
heard of
same
a
time,
player
right?
wanting to approach a journalist at any time.
But at the same time, right? There are in every beef, right? And I guess it depends on your terminology of beef, right? So some feel like when it's true out war, there are no lines, there are no boundaries, right? And I think we're at that point. But beforehand, I think there are some lines that you have to be mindful of crossing. Whenever you're speaking on somebody, even if it's somebody's kid, I think you have to be mindful of your tone when you're talking about that. So at the end of the day, nobody's out here under any illusions or delusions that LeBron did not get Bronny where he's at, right? Nobody's under that. Nobody's like saying that's not the case. Even though he was picked with 55, 56, whatever. Who remembers that 55, 56 player anyway, right? How many can you name? But anyway, right? There's arguments for both sides, right? There's arguments for both sides. But I think what it is the fact that inherently that's a touchy subject. Inherently, that's a touchy subject. And I think that LeBron has to have a level of tough skin and realize that nobody in his family is above criticism. But at the same time, there has to be a professional courtesy as well, too, to manage the tone in which you reference somebody's kid, even if you are criticizing them, right? Because at the end of the day,
Look,
it is that, and this dynamic hasn't happened before. We haven't had, it's not like Klay Thompson was playing with his dad. It's not like, you get what I'm saying? Like, we haven't had these, that's just the first player that is something that
but
came to
the
mind.
thing about it is like LeBron. The reason why we're having this conversation is because you are the one that brought it to the table. So you have to wear what comes with it. The talk about it is like, yo, you dictated that this would happen. If LeBron doesn't exist, does Bronny get drafted in the first round
It's
at all?
not one way. Accountability has to go both ways, lose. So yes, LeBron dictated
I
that, but
no,
you still have to manage. You still have to manage how you talk about
fam, but he
somebody.
didn't say anything wild about his son. All he said is
No,
like
no,
the reason
no.
your son is
I'm
here
not I'm
is
not
due to your
disagreeing with that.
ego.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I'm
So,
saying is Stephen A, just like Charles Barkley, just like Kendrick Perkins, they have a history of discussing things in tones that come off personal. You get what I'm saying? So, what people don't understand with journalism, especially when it's not print media, which a lot of people can get away with print media, right? Because you can't read intonation. But when you're on television, anybody worth their salt understands that there's certain tones that you have to carry, right? There's certain words that invoke personal relationships. There's a science to it. And what I'm saying is that just like we have to hold LeBron accountable for the spectacle that he brings upon himself, we also have to hold these media personnel to the tone that they use. Because at
but
the end
here's
of the day,
this is why I
bro,
disagree with you, bro. You can't say that your son is better than people in the NBA right now before he even gets to the league,
Lou,
and then expect people to then discuss that conversation in a tone
Lou,
that doesn't reflect what your comments are.
Lou,
Like
what I'm not this,
I
I'm
I,
not,
I can't
you're,
agree.
you're arguing about specifics. I'm not arguing about specifics. I'm arguing about overall. What I'm saying is media needs to be held accountable for their tone more than their like. I'm not saying you can't discuss what LeBron tweets. He put it out there in public. You can discuss whatever's on the public domain. That's on him. You tweet about your son, you tweet about Taco Tuesday, you put whatever out there in the public domain, that's for anybody to get at. That's not what I'm arguing. What I'm arguing is you as a journalist have a responsibility for the tone and how you deliver the message. That's on you. Just like we all have a responsibility for how our speech is carried out. And I don't think we're held accountable to that. And I think that's what this is me and old head talking. I think that's with the dawn of social media and a lot of people having more access to eyes and and things of that nature. But you have to be responsible. Think about it, bro. Think about how many times we get on Skip Bayless. Think about how many times we get on that dude that Stephen A was beefing with, right? The guy that I hate, the black guy. His
Jason
name
Whitlock.
Whitlock.
Oh yeah, yeah, Whitlock.
Okay, so those are extreme examples, but they're exactly the same thing. Yes, what they're talking about is in public domain, but look how they come about it, bro. That's what I'm throwing out there. It's the bigger. I'm looking at
Here's what I
at
don't
think
understand what you're saying.
at the
You're saying
bigger
they're
with that.
extreme examples, but they're saying the same thing. So you're saying that in the way that Stephen A. spoke about Bronny was extreme.
No, what I'm saying is Stephen A has to be held accountable for his tone at times, and he feels just like you
And
feel
that's why
like
I think we
LeBron.
disagree. I
You
don't
feel
think
like
his
LeBron.
tone, anything that had to do with anything with Bronny was anything disrespectful. I think that's what it comes down to fundamentally. Even though I don't like Stephen A. and I generally don't like his discourse, I don't think anything he said about Bronny
No,
was
I'm
disrespectful
looking
because
high.
it
I'm
wasn't
looking
about Bronny.
higher.
It was about Bron.
I'm looking higher. So in my assessment to this was the last straw. LeBron been having a problem with Stephen A. If I'm looking at this therapeutically, this was just something that LeBron needed because it covered him and made him look good because nobody's going to get mad at him for defending his son. LeBron had been planning to take his shots at Stephen A. He been not like Stephen A. He just needed a
Okay.
good way to take a shot at Stephen A. so he would look like he was
Okay.
above reproach. You get what I'm saying?
I'll take that. I'll
So
take
if
that.
you want to talk,
I
about
can agree with that.
specifics, that's how I feel about it. But I'm talking about overall.
No,
Overall,
now I understand where you're coming
Yeah.
from. I understand where you're coming from now.
Well,
I
I
understand where
had
you're coming from.
I had another overarching lens to that. I don't think LeBron was specifically talking to or about what Stephen A. said about his son
I
either.
agree too.
I think LeBron sees with the entire universe, so to speak, the discourse around his son
Yeah.
has been as a whole.
No,
And
the
he used
entire media
Stephen
landscape.
A.
How you actually
Yeah,
feel about
Stephen A.
LeBron,
is the
and Stephen
conduit
A.
to
know what his
deliver the
metaphors
message
to
to
say.
everybody.
He's the
Exactly.
example. Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
We're
Fair.
all on the same page on that.
Fair. All right, fellas. Let's wrap it up. This saga is wilding because at the end of the day, I don't know. It's entertaining.
I don't like
Just
neither
to
of
see
them.
them.
I don't want to talk about these things.
It's entertaining to me. I
Sorry,
want to see one
my
of them
bad.
crash out and ruin their careers. But I'm just a hater. So it's entertaining.
Nobody's gonna lose anything because nobody's
No.
gonna risk anything.
You're right. You're right. They're just all getting clicks. All right, y'all. Let's move on to the last topic. So we're gonna talk about the East and what's going on. But let's do it this way, man.
We're
So
gonna
we're
talk about
talking about
tanking,
LeBron.
right?
We're talking about LeBron. And Ev did it nicely. He came off the Pat McAfee show, got his game winner in. They beat Indiana. Then they go to lose to the Bulls again. And they lost to the Bulls twice. And,
I'm sorry, Hans. How many times did you say that?
twice.
You know,
Twice.
I remember somebody in our group chat saying that, prior to the game, talking about like, we're gonna win tonight, as if playing the Chicago Bulls was a guaranteed win, as the Lakers. What is it? The third hardest end of the
Yeah, end of
season
the year schedule. Yeah.
schedule. Yeah, so there was some
Phoenix
things
has the hardest, by the
I
way.
guess they penciled in as wins. It's interesting. It's the Chicago Bulls. But what do I know?
Listen. So they didn't execute. The Bulls beat them. Josh Giddey has a half-court shot, sinking it, winning the game. I, for one, am pleasantly surprised at that. But I think it raises a question, though. The Bulls, they lost Zach LaVine. Not lost, traded Zach LaVine. He didn't walk away necessarily. They traded him more.
They got nothing back, so they lost them.
Oh, all right. Well, DeMar DeRozan's not there. As far as star players, you got Vooch, who's been an all-star. They have every reason to tank, but they're not tanking. They're in it. They're going for it. They're in playing contention, and they're putting on a fight. And I want to applaud them for doing that. I want to applaud them for saying, "Look, man, we're still gonna hold our basketball integrity. We're gonna go in here. We're gonna play, and we're gonna play hard. We're going to prove the doubters wrong, Lou." So I wanna give your team the flowers, man. Shout out to them for going here. Who knows what the playoff run will look like? But shout out to them for not packing it in like every other team in the East has. Which brings us to every other team in the East. Recently, Philadelphia has been eliminated from playoff contention, along with the Brooklyn Nets. They have most recently been eliminated from playoff contention. And this is surprising because on the West side, you still have Phoenix, Portland, and San Antonio, who are statistically still up for the play-in, right? Now, I know everybody's worried about Phoenix because Kevin Durant injured his ankle right now, and he'll be out for a week. So who knows what's going to happen. But it's not like that in the East, man. You literally have the bottom four teams already out, and people are not even counting Toronto in because they're strategically changing in and out their lineups to where they're still kind of a little competitive, but then towards the end, it's clear what they're doing right now. Ev, I'll start with you since we started with Lou on the last one. When it comes to this East tanking, man, what do you make of it? Is this messing up the league? Because it's clear as day what these teams are doing. And is this an embarrassment for the Eastern Conference?
I just want to point out first that Hans tried his absolute best to wrap up the Bulls topic in like a minute and a half, so we
Very
didn't get
quickly,
to speak to it
very quickly,
anymore. And I respect that,
very, very
Hans.
quickly.
Very,
Especially
very
knowing that
professional.
we're playing them soon. It's
Very,
cool.
very
It's
professional
cool.
of you trying
Listen,
to get
man.
this wrap this Bulls topic up and
Listen,
throw it
man.
over your
We can
shoulder. I
talk
like
about
it.
that later.
I like it. Uh,
Yeah, and
so
and I'm expecting Evan to say, I don't know anything about tanking because my team isn't, you know what I mean? It's cool. I'm expecting the eloquent speeches of putting my team down. Oh, it's fine. I appreciate it.
So
Appreciate it.
honestly, I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of like where the Bulls are at right now, and I don't mean in 10th place in the East. What I mean by that is I like that they
Kobe
have a
White.
couple
We're ninth.
pieces. I know y'all are 10th right now, but uh, I like that y'all
I
have
ain't you.
a couple. Man, I'm trying to be complimentary here, okay? Uh, I like how y'all have looked 6-4 in your last 10. Uh, I like Buzelis. I like Kobe White, where he's on a year now of this new version of him, right? He popped around February of last year, and he's been close to 20 points a game since then. From where his career was going and the contract that he signed based on the trajectory of his career to where he's kind of exploded since then. A nice piece going forward. Buzelis, he might be, from what he's looked like the past 2 months, he might look like maybe the third or fourth best player in this draft, better than where he was drafted at 11. With how he's looked the last month is kind of what the Hawks hope they get out of Ricochet going forward. And Josh Giddey, I mean, you know, in OKC it wasn't going to work because Shea turned into that guy, and they turned into a team that now knew, okay, we have direction. We know the players that we need around Shea. Giddey wasn't going to be that. Um,
Shay and J Dub.
exactly. But in Chicago, Giddey's has had room to grow, room to fill out, room to get stronger, coming off of a solid Olympics run. With so it's allowed him to get better, and it's looking like you may have a piece that can move forward. So since they got Levine out of there, it's opened up room for these young players, and they are taking steps forward. If so, to bring it back to the tanking conversation, when you have players that are on an upward trajectory, you want to take the opportunity to see what you can get out of them to know if you have a potential future with these players. You have so many teams that are tanking right now that the Bulls couldn't tank if they wanted to. They made
A fact.
they
Thank you
made
for
the
bringing
trade.
that
No, but
up.
no,
Yeah.
yo, Ed brought up a very the point that I was gonna say is like, yeah, we can't take harder than the rest of these guys.
So if you're firmly in the play in, you might as well put your best foot forward. I mean, let's be honest. They're in a 9-10 right now against Miami. We spent 15 minutes last week saying how we really felt about the Miami Heat. I believe in the last 2 or 3 play-ins, they've played each other and it's been tough games. So the Bulls could realistically win that first game against the Miami Heat, and now you're going up against Orlando and Atlanta with a chance to get into the playoffs. And you mentioned in the first section when we're talking about capital. I mean, that could be a couple extra games in somebody's pocket, right? In some checks. So if you're in the position where you're going to be in the play in anyway, you might as well make the most of it. Give your players some seasoning. That speaks to tanking as a whole, though. I think the problem that people have is when, even if you have a top 4 chance or equalize at the top 4 of getting the number 1 pick when you're the 4 of the worst teams in the league, it opens up opportunities for teams that know that they're not going to the playoffs to just throw it away. And when you have an 82 game season and you have 4, 5, 6, 7 teams that are tanking, it creates a lot of bad basketball. And we're fans. We try to tune in every night to watch the NBA. We want to know that every game that we watch is going to be competitive. When a third of your
So
league is
yeah, I feel you. When a
there's
third
no
of your league is tanking, it doesn't look good. But let me ask you this though. Let's get into the specifics real quick. We have a few minutes left. Philadelphia, I want to talk about them specifically, just because I feel like out of the teams that are quote unquote tanking, they have, I would say, the roster that's filled with the most all stars, or with the quote unquote on paper
Is this part of the process?
best players. So that's my thing. This tanking, are they tanking to get somebody from the draft, or are they tanking to rest their players and re up for next season? Right? And I know we all know the answer to that, but which tanking is better? Are there varying degrees? I guess that's my real question. Anybody can answer. Are there varying degrees of
So here's
tanking, and which tanking situation
Let
is
me
better?
let me say one thing on Philly real
so
quick, Lou. Philly has to be bottom six or they lose their draft pick to the Thunder. So that's
Right.
specifically why they're tanking. So to add that context to which one is better or which one's worse when you're in that situation. Go for it, Lou.
no, the one thing I'm gonna bring up, and even though affectionately I always love to bring up opportunity to talk about my team, especially in a positive light. But realistically, is then you start looking about how do we then still make our team attractive to potential top tier talent if you can't show that there is something here that you can build upon, which is why I feel like the Bulls are doing something a little bit different. It's like, okay, why are we going to compete with somebody in terms of Philadelphia or Atlanta in terms of tanking? We have some pieces here that make us look attractive enough that we have something that, hey, if we get another Levine, DeRozan, they weren't the right pieces. Cool, we move things around, but we have a foundation where, hey, maybe we might be one or two pieces away if we have a top tier talent, a superstar for real, that maybe it might elevate us to that, especially if we show what we can do towards the end of the season with uh, 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 potential playing success that will come from we know what's going on, right? So you have somebody like Giddy in the last 10 games, man, he's averaging almost a trip dub, right? Kobe was averaging almost 30 points over the last 10 games, and then our rookie averaging close to towards 15. I think it's about
I see
13
how
and
you brought
change.
the
So
Bulls back into this. But go ahead.
there's always a great time to bring the Bulls back. But in
Go
terms
ahead.
of the
Go ahead.
tanking conversation, right? When you talk about a team like Philadelphia, other than the fact that obviously it's like, all right, cool, if you want to be able to secure our picks, you know what I mean? What do we do? And then you have a team that like the Bulls who's like, well, what do we have to lose to go for? We're gonna get a protected pick, first round pick from Portland. Uh, we also have another of our own first round pick, and then we also have a second round pick coming in this next draft. And then for subsequent years, the 3 years subsequently to come, we got three first round picks. So let's go for it. I mean, because not only are we going to see what we have, testing what we have in terms of roster, but we have a chance to go fish for somebody else. Teams like Atlanta, I'm curious to see what happens. Like, what's the direction? What do you plan to do from here, right? Um, Philadelphia seems a little bit more clear because okay, PG is on it. How much time does PG have left? Embiid, they're looking to medically potentially like medically retire him. So you look at your nucleus of really where your guy is really maxi, and then how do we build on a team from here? So yeah, if I'm Philadelphia, man, I let the whole house burn down and I try to figure out, all right, cool. I know Embiid and PG are not, they're never going to be the future of what we have here. Let's focus on what we could get going with Maxi and then what in terms of what we can do in the draft. And also it's like how do we make Philadelphia attractive enough to where we may want to, where somebody wants to come here. Because I think that's also another aspect of this tanking piece that is difficult
Yeah,
because
I
how do you
think.
again like I said attract top talent that makes you somewhat of a contender moving
Yeah,
forward.
I think it'll be difficult and complex in Philadelphia's situation, given the number of stars that they have and the contracts that they do. In summation, what I'll say with the East, with this tanking, man, I think the East is in shambles right now in terms of a competitive nature. We're all looking at the West. The West is looking really attractive here, even in the playing. Like you're wanting to see those matchups. Like it's competitive from top to bottom in the West, and the East just doesn't look like that. And I know part of that does have to do with injury, right? You have Brunson going down. but he's supposed to be coming back. So that makes the Knicks look a little testy. You know, no offense, but it just kind of question it a little bit. But you hope that he'll get back there.
Ev was like, how did we end up again with a Knicks stray?
You got Dame out indefinitely. You get what I'm saying? Dame's out indefinitely with the blood clot, right? So that leaves you with like
situation.
Indiana, Detroit. Detroit's more appealing than Indiana. Do we really want to? You know, it's just.
I'm about to say nobody has faith in Indiana for real. We just
and then the Magic.
Let's be real.
The Magic, are
Cleveland
with
and Boston are the only two teams that we think are actually like competitive, relevant teams when it comes to like a championship type of situation.
Got you. So Magic are they're injury prone, but nonetheless, I think we do got to get this tanking thing under control because it does play with the integrity of the game. It does. So I think it's something that we have to watch out. It's sad that it's that one lopsided. And I think what's going on in the West to me is more appealing for basketball eyes than what's going on with the East. But guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys for joining us. As always, hit us up on our social medias. Check us out. We're on YouTube. Go over there to see our lovely faces smiling at you and the little things that you can't see in the recording as well. Appreciate you guys. See you guys next week. Peace. Go Blazers.
What's up, guys, and thanks for listening. I want you to do two things for me right now. One, give this episode a thumbs up, and two, be sure to subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on all the socials at the 3on3 Podcast and send us an email at the 3on3podcast@gmail.com. We appreciate you and tune in next week.